My name is Emily Davis, and I'm 21 years old. After finishing culinary school, I started working at the coffee shop my parents own. We have many regular customers, and I really enjoy working there. I admire my parents for running the shop for so long. Working while studying was harder than I expected, but I was happy with my life. However, everything changed when I got an unexpected call from Bob. He told me his wife had an accident and sounded very worried. We didn't know much about the accident, but we were concerned for my sister-in-law. Bob asked if we could look after his kids while he went to the hospital, and we agreed right away. Bob brought the kids to our coffee shop, and they seemed confused, but I tried to make them feel comfortable. 2 hours later, Bob called again. We were relieved to hear that my sister-in-law was okay, but she had a bad sprained ankle and needed to rest for a while. Bob asked if we could continue taking care of the kids. At first, I was unsure if I could handle it. My parents run the coffee shop, and I also work there, so it would be hard to do this every day. But after talking it over with my parents, we decided I would look after the kids for 2 weeks. I was nervous because I didn't have much experience with kids, but they were well behaved, and things went smoothly. My mom helped me when I needed it. After 2 weeks, things settled down, and my sister-in-law was better. But then, I got another call from Bob. His wife still wasn't feeling well, and Bob asked if I could watch the kids again. I wasn't sure what to do, but I couldn't leave the kids without help, so I agreed to help occasionally. A few days later, my sister-in-law asked me to watch the kids again. I agreed, and the next day, I picked up the kids, took them to kindergarten, and then took care of them at home afterward. My mom would visit sometimes to check on things. At night, I fed the kids, bathed them, and waited for Bob to pick them up. He thanked me for helping, saying it was a lifesaver. Even though I was tired and unsure if I was doing the right thing, I didn't want to leave Bob's family without support. A few days later, I got another message from my sister-in-law asking for help again. I went to pick up the kids, dropped them off at kindergarten, and helped my parents at the cafe for a little while. When it was time to pick them up, I quickly left to get them. There were already a few people waiting to pick up their kids when I arrived. As I waited for my nephews to come out, I heard someone call my name. I turned around and was surprised to see Ashley, an older student I knew from school. We hadn't seen each other in a long time. She told me her child also went to the same kindergarten as my nephews. I wanted to talk more, but it wasn't really the right time, so we exchanged contact information and said goodbye. The next day, Ashley came to the cafe while I was working. My parents saw what was going on and told us we could chat when there were fewer customers. I took this opportunity to talk with Ashley. Ashley seemed to really like our cafe, which made me happy, but then, she suddenly became serious and said, "By the way, I saw your nephew's mom the other day." I was surprised by this and just nodded. She continued, saying she hadn't spoken to her, but she was sure it was her because they had talked before. Ashley seemed to struggle to find the right words, which made me curious, so I encouraged her to keep going. What Ashley said next shocked me. It seemed my mom had overheard the conversation too, and we made eye contact. After Ashley left, I asked my mom what she thought about what had been said. My mom replied, "Let's keep an eye on this situation for now," and I agreed. Then, one day, I got a call from Bob. I couldn't answer right away, and when I looked at my phone, I saw I had missed several calls from him. I quickly called Bob back, feeling confused and worried. I asked, "What's going on?" Bob answered in a tense voice, clearly trying to control his anger. He told me that when he went home to get something he had forgotten, he found the kids alone in the house. The house was supposed to be empty, and this shocked me. But then, I started wondering, why was Bob upset with me? As I tried to ask him, my questions seemed to make him even angrier. He yelled, "My wife told me she asked you to take care of the kids today, but you left them alone, and now you're talking back to me?" I was taken aback by his words, but there were things I needed to explain, so I said, "Yes, your wife did ask me, but I told her I couldn't do it today. My mom got sick last night, and we were short-staffed at the cafe. I had to work and didn't have time to look after the kids." After hearing my explanation, Bob went quiet. Then, he asked, "According to my wife, every time she asks you to help with the kids, you complain and demand payment. Is that true?" I couldn't help but raise my voice during the conversation. I said, "I've never asked for money. I've never said anything like that. I've been helping with the kids, and Mom knows that too. If you have any doubts, why don't you ask her?" When I said this, Bob went completely silent. After a pause, he muttered, "So what was this story about money that my wife mentioned?" I replied, "I have no idea. You should ask your wife about it. Bob, sounding tired, said, I'll do that. I was still upset but felt like I had to share something I had heard from Ashley. After hearing what I said, Bob sighed and said, give me some time to think, then hung up. As I started to calm down, I grew worried about Bob, so I told my mom everything that had happened. Time passed without any word from Bob, and my parents and I were getting concerned. Then, a few days later, I got another message from Bob's wife asking me to look after the kids again. At first, I thought about saying no. I had done so much for her and the kids, and I felt like I had been treated unfairly, but I also felt embarrassed knowing I had been talked about behind my back. My mom stopped me from replying right away. She suggested I contact Bob first, so I forwarded the message to him. A few minutes later, Bob replied. It seemed like he had been upset, but after our conversation, he seemed to have made up his mind. After hearing Bob's side, I agreed to help, and I told Bob's wife, okay, and went to pick up the kids as usual. After dropping the kids off at kindergarten, I called someone. Once the call ended, I took a deep breath, preparing myself for what was coming. When I arrived at the coffee shop, Bob was already there. He looked very tense, either nervous or anxious. It was the first time I had seen him like this, and I wasn't sure how to approach him. But then, my mom stepped in. She told Bob, I'll pick up the kids, so don't worry, you need to go home and talk things out with your wife, Emily. I'm counting on you. Bob, looking surprised by my mom's words, nodded. I nodded back at her, then said, okay, I'm off, and left with Bob. When we got to Bob's house, he stopped in front of the door, looking for his keys. I noticed his hands were shaking, but I pretended not to see. Inside the house, I could faintly hear voices, my sister-in-law and a few other women talking. Bob unlocked the door and quietly opened it. We stepped inside without making a sound, and I could hear their conversation clearly. One of the voices asked, so, how's your foot doing? I could hear my sister-in-law answering the woman's question. She said, oh, it's fine, almost completely healed. I thought to myself, I knew something felt off lately, but I quickly focused again on what she was saying. Then, she added, but once it's fully healed, my husband will probably find out, and I won't be able to relax like I do now. One of the women responded, oh, right, your sister-in-law and her parents are looking after the kids, right? How lucky. My sister-in-law replied, yeah, really lucky that Emily isn't married. I'm so grateful to have an unemployed, single person living at home. Hearing this made me angry. I had suspected my sister-in-law might be taking advantage of us, but I never imagined she'd think so badly of me. My anger reached its limit, and I burst into the living room, glaring at her. Yes, I'm not married, and I live at home, but I'm not just doing nothing. I thought we were helping because you needed it. I didn't think you'd talk about it like this. But my sister-in-law wasn't focused on what I was saying. Instead, she looked confused and asked, why are you here? How did you get in? Just then, I felt a tap on my shoulder and stepped back. She finally noticed Bob, and her eyes widened. Bob, with a cold voice, said, I let her in. You've been lying to me all this time. You're the worst. You've been using the money I gave you for yourself instead of giving it to Emily. My sister-in-law turned pale. I walked over to her friends and told them it was time to leave. Everyone left with awkward expressions on their faces. As my sister-in-law's friends were leaving, one person made eye contact with me. It was Ashley, my senior from school. She had interacted with my sister-in-law before and seemed to be concerned about her recent behavior. When we unexpectedly met again, Ashley offered to help with the situation. Once all the friends had left, my sister-in-law started crying and told her side of the story. To sum it up, she explained that after the birth of their second child, taking care of the kids became really difficult. Bob was always busy with work and couldn't help with childcare or housework, which made things harder for her. When she got injured, my mom and I helped, which made things easier, and she ended up relying on us. Regarding the money Bob gave her, she admitted that she hadn't had any spending money since she got married and couldn't resist using the money Bob gave her. I wasn't completely convinced by my sister-in-law's excuses. Sensing my doubt, Bob suggested it was time to leave, and I agreed. I left his house with him. When I got home, my mom was waiting with a worried look on her face. It seemed like my dad was taking care of my nephews, so I explained everything to her. She listened and said, I see, this is a problem between the two of them, and then went back to my nephews. My nephews, not knowing what was happening, smiled and called out, Aunt Emily. Despite feeling conflicted, I did my best to hide my emotions and smiled back. A few hours later, Bob returned home and said he would stay at our parents' house for the night. My mom, understanding, simply said, "I see." After putting the kids to bed, Bob explained his decision to our parents and me. He said, "I won't divorce her this time, but if she does this again, I'll consider it." Bob apologized for what I had gone through, and he also apologized to my mom. I told him it was okay, but I asked if he was sure about his decision. Bob nodded and said, "Yeah, after talking to my wife, I realized I'm partly to blame. We've decided to give it another try." I asked Bob what he meant. He said, "I've been focused on work and haven't paid enough attention to my wife. I left all the responsibility for the kids to her, and I now realize that it put too much pressure on her. I've been unfair to both her and the kids. I should have spent more quality time with them." I had mixed feelings hearing this, but my mom spoke up. She said, "As an individual, it's hard to forgive what your wife did to us, but as a wife and mother, I can understand some of her feelings. If this is the decision you both have made, I won't oppose it, but don't involve others in your problems again." Bob nodded and bit his lip, clearly affected by my mom's words. Since then, neither Bob nor my sister-in-law have asked anything of me. I haven't even seen her once. My father is still angry, saying she can't even apologize, but honestly, I prefer not to see my sister-in-law because it would just bring back bad memories. When I told Bob how I felt, he promised, "I understand. I'll try to make sure you don't have to meet her again." Thanks to that, my daily life returned to normal. One day, I heard the bell at the coffee shop and turned around. At the entrance stood Bob, with my nephews beside him. As soon as my nephews saw me, they let go of Bob's hand and ran over to me, calling my name. I smiled and greeted them happily. While the kids were chatting with my parents over cake, Bob quietly told me that although my sister-in-law was sorry, she didn't like the kids visiting me because they were so fond of me. Hearing this, I couldn't help but think it was her own fault. I know there may come a time when I have to face my sister-in-law again, but right now, it doesn't seem like I'll forget what she did to me anytime soon.